So I can't just unknow the pain of a Mormon faith crisis. I can't just forget about it or move past it or pretend that it didn't happen. And the reason is knowing that other people are going through a Mormon faith crisis. It's too much. I can't stand by and not do anything about it. I consider myself a strong person. And for me, it completely demolished me. It ruined my life for more than a decade. It eviscerated me. It turned me inside out. It squashed my entire identity. It was like, in a sense, it was like worse than death. It felt like dying. It felt like I was being murdered. People go through faith crisis all the time, but I sincerely believe that a Mormon faith crisis stands alone in its own way, in the gravity. Mormonism is not a casual religion. And even other high-demand religions like Jehovah's Witnesses or Scientology or whatever, I don't think they have the same type of... I can't judge because I don't know, but I have seen a lot of my friends that are religious. They go through their own faith crisis. They don't believe in God anymore or whatever. They reject what their parents taught them as young. I even have a friend who was like a pastor for the in the Lutheran church, and he's like, yeah, I no longer believe. He's like, yeah, it was tough, but I had to finally back off, whatever. I have lots of friends all over the world, actually, because I have just lots of connections through like a YouTube channel and stuff, and I've had people fly in and visit me literally from Japan, Germany, everything. And I've met people from all walks of life that have their own stories of faith, or losing faith or gaining faith or whatever. And I'm telling you, a Mormon faith crisis is just unique. It's just the suffering of it. It's exquisite, man. I have had horrible things happen to me. I've been sexually abused, physically abused as a child, as a young child, or through childhood, really. I've had a really bad, messy divorce happen. I've had to, in my younger childhood, I had to talk my mother constantly back from the brink of suicide. As a 5-year-old boy, asking your mother not to kill herself that day. Traumatizing. We grew up in extreme poverty. I was homeless with my mom. We lived in a homeless shelter for like a year. And this is back in the late 80s when there wasn't a lot of programs for children. I've struggled with severe learning disabilities, teachers hating me. I've been through lots of different types of pain in my life. But losing my faith in the Mormon church in my 20s was in a league of its own. I've been in love with a woman completely, and then had that woman fall in love with someone else and leave me. And then we lived in adjacent apartment complexes, so I would see her every night, kissing and saying goodbye to her boyfriend or whatever. And I would curl up in the fetal position and I would sob myself. For hours, I'd sob myself to sleep. I have experienced true pain, but a Mormon faith crisis is in a league of its own. It's too much. If it's too much for me, and I consider myself a strong person, again, then I have no idea how other people are it's just so sad that level of pain is what people are experiencing. I hope and pray that the pain that they are experiencing is less than the pain I experienced. Because maybe I engaged in Mormonism further and deeper than most people. In fact, I think I did. Even in high school, other Mormons in Ogden, Utah, the heart of Mormonism right there in Ogden, on the Wasatch Front. Other Mormons would call me a goody-goody. Other Mormons would be like, dude, you're too religious. Even I had missionary companions that said I was too religious. I So maybe I bought into the whole gospel of Jesus Christ as presented by the Church of Jesus Christ, the whole cosmology theology of Mormonism. Maybe I bought into it harder and deeper. Maybe I was a lot more hardcore than most Mormons ever become. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason, the pain that I experienced coming down from that and losing all of that literally was worse than death. Let me be honest with you. The only time I have experienced pain as exquisite as that, like the only thing that compares really was a DMT trip where I like went to hell, or I didn't really, it's extremely hard to describe, but I was doing PTSD therapy, and a DMT session was part of this therapy. And I was ripped out of this dimension and thrown through thousands of different dimensions. I mean, I can write a book about this experience, but I'm not going to go into it. But I went into places in the universe and galaxy, places of consciousness that are entirely hostile to human life and consciousness. It was the most horrific experience I've ever. But even that, like, literally feeling during that experience what it's like to be murdered, not only physically but spiritually, your mind and consciousness being murdered into oblivion. That is the only level of intensity that I could compare to a Mormon faith crisis. Like I said, I've been through death, I've been through horrible tragedy, I've been through everything, or a lot of things in my life, and just nothing compares. And so I just feel the need. People say, you leave the church, but you don't leave it alone. No, that's so stupid. It's so juvenile to say that. The truth is, anybody who experiences tragedy, whether you're Martin Luther King, Gandhi, whatever, if you are a person with a heart and a conscience, you experience something grave and horrible, and then you immediately think, oh shit, other people are going through this. And not just a few, thousands, perhaps more than 1 million people right now are in some level of Mormon faith crisis. In fact, I'm going to venture to say most people right now in Utah, at least, most Mormons in Utah, let's say under 40 in Utah, are in some spectrum, are in the spectrum somewhere of having a faith crisis and a complete collapse of their Mormon testimony, And so when there is so much pain and suffering that I think, and here's the kicker, I think that in a way, or I think a lot of it is avoidable and unnecessary. Sure, losing your faith is always going to be excruciating, okay? But a lot of it that Mormons go through, a lot of the suffering, the rejection, the shunning, the scarlet letter, people calling you unfaithful, apostate, you never had a real testimony. The same thing happens in Christian circles. Same thing happens with evangelicals and Protestants and Muslims and Orthodox Jews. I mean, although that's a very small group, but the same thing. It's not like it's there. That specific thing is not unique to Mormonism, but there are things that are unique to Mormonism that other religions I don't think are going to grasp or understand. Like the level of buy-in for a Latter-day Saint is not something you can easily compare to other religions because it is its own animal. So I would like myself to help Mormons come to a place in faith crisis, end up just like Russell Brand talks about. I love Russell Brand. End up in a positive place where they can see the church for what it is, a gift, ultimately. Just like your parents are a gift, just like being born in this country is a gift, or whatever, to have a positive outlook on life. Because what happened for me, it was so painful and exquisite. I left the church when I was 26. I was an apologist before that. I left the church secretly. I didn't want to admit it to people because I didn't want people to be let down. I felt like I had been an EFY counselor and an elder quorum president and a leader and like all these things. And I was a good missionary and I baptized a ton of people and like blah, blah, blah. I felt like I had to hold the roof up, be a pillar for people, right? So I secretly left. I secretly lost faith. I didn't remove my name from the records, but I lost faith. And it was so painful and lonely and horrible. I was suicidal. I went through all these things. And I went crazy. I in my 20s, I went crazy. I said, I'm going to not keep the law of chastity anymore. I'm going to do, bad things. I'm angry at God. My relationship with God, I was filled with hatred towards God, towards the church. I fantasized about a meteor hitting Temple Square, blowing Mormon headquarters to smithereens. I was in a super dark place, okay? And that spiraled into drug addiction for me. And so for the next 8 years, I was addicted to Adderall. Also, it spiraled into super bad health problems. I lost all my energy and will to live. And I'm talking will to live spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I could no longer digest food very well. My allergies went crazy. I couldn't get out of bed anymore. My Mormon faith crisis sent me flying into this weird space where everything just shut down for me. And I'm not exaggerating. It might sound like I'm exaggerating right now. I'm not at all. I legitimately had PTSD, probably still do have PTSD from losing my faith in my 20s. And then after that, I was extremely concerned with others in the church going through this. And and I was also very, very aware that members and leaders, yes, Elder Holland, all those people that have criticized and said really negative, hurtful things towards apostates or youth who leave the church, made fun of them, or said disparaging thing, Elder Bednar saying disparaging things, the church oversimplifying the situation. Oh, well, they're just offended, or they just want to live a sinful lifestyle, or they're hiding their sin, blah, blah, blah. I was really aware of the negativity coming from the church too, which adds a whole unnecessary layer of suffering. And so I felt the need to help others, right? But the sad part, and I came back to the church, and I went through a repentance process, which was painful and rigorous. And then I became an elder quorum president again. I again, went into the leadership, but this time I just consider myself a nuanced Mormon because I didn't really literally take the Book of Mormon to be true, to be historical anymore, or the Book of Abraham. I didn't literally take Joseph Smith to be a prophet, at least in the way that the church represented or presented him. I did not literally believe in the truth claims of Mormonism anymore. But I was like, I can see the good in the church. I still believe in God, or at least I want to believe in God. There's certainly spirituality happening, and I can help people. I kind of felt like a fraud because here I am serving in the church, but I don't literally even believe its truth claims. So I felt like a fraud. And when I married my wife, I felt like I was lying to the bishop about having a temple, getting a temple recommend, because he's like, do you have faith in Joseph Smith was a prophet, blah, 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 blah. The whole stupid temple recommend interview to assess your worthiness to go to the temple. Anyway, he was a good guy, and I felt like I was lying to him. But there was a part of me that did want to believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. I certainly needed to marry my wife in the temple for her sake. That's what she and I had wanted. We'd gone 3 years dating each other without having sex, which drove me freaking crazy. I remember punching the wall one time. I was like, I cannot do this. But I still believed enough in something, in God, in something, that I needed to see myself get married in the temple. I needed to follow that goal through because I fought too much. I sacrificed too much to stop and not get married in the temple. I at least had to make it to a temple marriage. So back to feeling like I felt like a liar. And I felt like when I would go into the temple on my marriage day, on the day that I got married in the temple, I felt like I would feel like an imposter in the temple. So we go to the Logan Temple in Logan, Utah, and I enter the temple doors on the day of my own wedding. And immediately I was hit with a wall of love and acceptance. And the voices that I was hearing in my head were, of course you are welcome here. We love that you're here. You're absolutely, it's just as appropriate that you're here as anyone else. Like it was almost like an acid trip or a high on cannabis or something. Just this incredible feeling filled my whole being, and I felt total love and acceptance from God, which was a really weird time in my life to be like feeling the Spirit, feeling all this stuff. It was a beautiful experience, it's a good memory for me. You know, I just wish that somehow we could do something to eliminate or alleviate some of the suffering, because there is unnecessary suffering happen. There's an exorbitant amount of suffering happening with the Mormons in faith crisis. We should all, both outside the church and inside the church, help Mormons who are going through this, because the church, let's face it, church leaders really aren't doing very much to help them, because they're caught between condemning them and understanding them, and they can't really move there's not a lot of wiggle room. So church leaders end up just choosing a course of inaction, essentially inaction. And it's almost like, it's really unfortunate that that's the case, but people like me, we can't just walk away from the church knowing that there's so much suffering for innocent people that are honest and that are just blindsided. It's tough. It's really tough. I certainly can't just walk away from Mormonism and leave it alone. That's irresponsible. That's ridiculous. That's like Gandhi saying, yep, the British are here and they're abusing us and they're taking our country's resources and it's an empire, but I'm just going to walk away because I just reject that. I'm just going to walk away and move to a different country. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. People like me, we need to find a way to help alleviate the suffering somehow. All right. See you later.